As South Asian in the past decade or so, we've been one of the most successful groups here in America. But as we continue to grow, there's been a growing divide between us. We're seeing a split starting to happen with people like Nicki Haley or Vivek Ramaswamy bringing people to the right, especially what happened in 2024. And I'm here to tell you why.
That is why if we've had the largest influx of illegals into this country in American history, we will have the largest mass deportation in American history.
First of all, can you talk about the snow here in the South right now? It's crazy what happened. But what I wanted to talk about was the brown nationalism paradox. I already covered the brown right-wing one in one of my earlier videos. But it's basically like we're seeing these rise of these xenophobic politicians railing against immigration and things like that, even though they and their families were the main beneficiaries of it in the first place. Let me take y'all back to 1965 when immigration was opened up for South Asians and other Asians. And that's when thousands of Indians, Pakistanis, and all of those others started coming in. And families such as those of Nicki Haley or Vivek came from those policies in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And they were only able to come because of that Immigration Act. But these same people are now going on TV and rallying against immigration, talking about deporting people.
That is not racist or xenophobic. That is what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States.
And siding with those people who would have never given them a chance all those decades ago. Why? Because things like Hindu nationalism and the whole model minority thing, which I've also covered in a video. But these things were catalysts in creating this new type of politicians from the Indian South Asian community. See, those first South Asians started coming after the 60s were predominantly upper caste, Brahmins and things like that. And they, over there in India, had special privileges and had the means to be able to attain an education, to become those doctor, lawyer, engineers, and then move to America and get those good jobs. See, at first, most of them were left-leaning, but as the decades went on, we saw a rise of Hindu nationalism, aka Hindutva, especially after 2014 with the rise of Modi. And we saw this new group of Indians emerge who were super nationalistic, right-wing, and supported Modi's policies against minorities. You know, that discrimination we're seeing in India against Muslims, Sikhs, and things like that. Hell, now we see a Hindutva lobbying group on par with AIPAC. That's how strong they've become. And one of the outcomes of that was what happened in 2024 with Vivek or Nicki supporting xenophobic policies against immigrants.
Deport the children of illegal immigrants.
I said the entire family unit.
You said you want to deport the entire family unit of undocumented immigrants.
Yes.
Even though their parents were immigrants themselves. Why? Because they presented themselves as the model minority. You know, this whole myth of being the good one who followed the rules and stuff. Well, it was only created because back in the 60s, when African Americans were fighting for civil rights, they used Asians as some sort of model minority who didn't rebel and didn't go against the status quo at that time. Nowadays, conveniently, Indians and South Asians were picked as the most convenient option for that model minority slot. And you'll see those South Asians with that internalized racism happily go along with it. Why? Because they got that proximity to power, what they over desired, and they think being closer to whiteness is a way of achieving that.
We're not a racist country, Brian. We've never been a racist country. Our goal is to make sure that today is better than yesterday. Oh, I faced racism when I was growing up, but I can tell you...
As you see what happened with Vivek in the Ohio governor race, or guys like Kash who were berated for having a Diwali pose, they're just useful puppets. And as soon as they're done being used, they're going to be thrown away like nothing, thrown under the bus and be made scapegoats as soon as it's convenient for them.
What are you conserving? You are bringing change. I'll be 100% honest with you. Christianity is the one truth.
Christian voices should be the main voice of America, and I want to know basically why you seem to be, and I don't mean to be horribly offensive, but why you seem to be masquerading as a Christian.
Familiar with the Ten Commandments? You call yourself a Hindu, but you also call yourself Christian. I don't call myself Christian. I call myself a Hindu.
The rise of the conservative nationalistic group we're seeing in South Asians is also having an effect in other countries like India, where support for Modi is at an all-time high, even though of the atrocities he committed against Muslims and Sikhs by targeting them overseas in places like Canada. You see this nationalistic viewpoint as a way of looking stronger, and a lot of them go along with it because it projects power. And in our community, that's one of the things they strive for. But all's not lost though, because we still see a good chunk of South Asians vote on the left, with people like Ro Khanna or other people who still represent South Asians on the left. But as the 2020s tick on, we're seeing these figures like Vivek, Dinesh, Nicki Haley start to capitalize on that nationalistic neoconservative rising we're seeing in the South Asian space. We're seeing alliance between the white Christian nationalists, Hindutva, and Zayos in America, and it's a scary thing going on, not gonna lie. But as we recognize it, we can still fight back against it, against the hate and the xenophobic tendencies they have against humans who aren't like them. Thank you all so much for watching. Check out my other videos on brown content, and peace.